Hey guys, it's Catherine, and in today's video, I want to talk about a particular substance. This is still considered to be a conspiracy theory, but of course, if you've watched my videos, then you probably know that the majority of conspiracy theories that I talk about aren't conspiracy theories. They are real, but I'm going to label this as a conspiracy theory for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I don't want this video to get taken down. Okay, well that's really the only reason actually. I don't want this video to be shadow banned because my videos have been shadow banned before. And, for the most part, I wear that as like a badge of honor, right? Because I must be talking about something that they don't want to get out. And I remember one of the first videos I had removed was about COVID. And that got taken down pretty quickly. And of course, everything, that I talked about in that video just ended up being true and, whatever. And so I just don't want this information to be taken down. And so for that reason, I'm actually going to put on the screen what this substance is, but I'm going to call it microphone because that's the only word I could think of that kind of rhymed with it. So I'm going to put the word here. Okay. And if you have heard of this substance before, then, there could be a couple of reasons. One is that you've heard of this conspiracy. The other reason is that you could potentially know that it's a real thing. And so I felt like it would be fitting to talk about it, especially in light of everything that's happening with P. Diddy and Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, basically all of the sexual assault allegations that are coming to light and just the dark nature of Hollywood and the music industry and everything. These events are only the tip of the iceberg. And, of course, all of the conspiracy theorists out there were talking about these things years ago, right? How all of the pedophilia and the rituals and things like that in Hollywood, that, we've known about that for a very long time. But what's ultimately going to come to light eventually from the path that we're on with all of these revelations is ultimately going to be the disclosure of this substance. So if you are not familiar with microphone, it is a drug that is used by the ultra wealthy, the elites. And it is said to have properties of not only being like a hallucinogenic to a sense, but it ultimately is almost like the fountain of youth, and it keeps people from aging. And so it is believed that a lot of celebrities use it, politicians, the wealthy families like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, Queen Elizabeth, and it's just what's kept them from aging. And of course, you can kind of see it in a lot of celebrities of just how some of them they just don't age. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence of plastic surgery, right? And of course, one can chalk that up to having a lot of money and having access to some of the best technology out there when it comes to anti-aging. But, we're going to talk about specifically this particular substance. Now, okay, let me talk about how I've come to discover that it's real, or why I believe it is real. So my awakening started in 2018. And during this process, there was a lot happening to me, right? Voices, seeing things, getting downloads, and then getting messages about whatever, all. And my personal family members, like my nieces and nephews, I started to get really worried about them and start to have this just this overprotective feeling for some reason. And that was like a whole personal thing that ended up coming to light about an actual like situation and experience that one of my nieces had, and it was awful, and nobody was brought to be held accountable for that particular act, and I would not let it go. And because I wouldn't let it go, I basically became estranged from those family members because they didn't want to file a police report, and this was of a sexual nature, right? And so like I just wasn't going to let it go. But they wanted to protect this particular person. I had proof that it happened, not only from my niece who shared what happened, but also another family member who had witnessed it. And they didn't want to turn him in. It's a whole thing. So anyway, and of course, if you know me, you kind of know my fiery nature about protecting kids. And so, yeah, they found it easier to just push me to the side, I guess. Okay, so that happened. And then I was working in the ER at the time, and I'm still in this energy of just like children, right? Like I don't know, like I've always felt very protective of children, but this was really heightened at this time. And so, call it a coincidence, right? There's no such thing, but there was a boy to come into the ER, a 2-year-old boy who the mom came in. She was Middle Eastern of some sort. I didn't know exactly which country she was from, but she was speaking Arabic. And he came in and he was having fevers and vomiting for 2 days. Okay. All right. No big deal. There's plenty of kids that have that. Usually it's a stomach bug, treat the fever, treat the vomiting, and you're good to go. But this kid was really sick for some reason. Couldn't control the fever. Like, just something wasn't right. Now, during this time, I'm actually in the psych area, right? And I have my own section that's far away from this particular patient, but he was in the one of our bigger trauma rooms. Like, he wasn't a trauma patient, but he just so happened to take up that room. And so I'd walk by and just peek in, and I just felt like weird about it. And so whatever, I had to go back to my patients. And then I come back and I have to get like paper for something, for, I don't know, a printer or something like that. I come back and I look at the mom, and the mom just looks worried, but it wasn't a worry like for her kid. It looked like a worry for herself. It was just a worry that didn't sit right with me. And, whatever. I kept this to myself because, like, okay, that doesn't mean anything to have these feelings, right? In my head. So I leave it alone. I get my paper. I go back. I come back and like, this kid's really sick. They're going to admit him. And we didn't have a children's hospital at the hospital that I worked at. So we were going to send him to our sister hospital. And this time when I come back, the dad is there. And I believe they were speaking Arabic. That's what I think that they were speaking. But, I can't be too sure. They were speaking another language for sure. And I remember that the dad was there and nobody else was around me. And he had his hand underneath the mom's arm like this, kind of like what you would do if you were like scolding someone. And she looked like kind of scared of him now, and he's saying something to her. And I didn't know what he was saying, but it just felt like he was threatening her or like warning her or something. Again, it just did not feel right. So fast forward, they're getting ready to transport this kid. I leave to go to my patients. I come back, and right before They get ready to get him on the gurney to leave. He codes. Okay. Now, because we are not a children's hospital, when anybody codes, it's a big deal. But when a child codes, that's a whole other level. Okay. And not to mention, there aren't a lot of pediatric nurses on staff. I was the only pediatric nurse there because I started off my nursing career in peds, okay, which kind of ties into the whole like protecting children thing, right? And so this kid codes, we work on this kid for like 45 minutes and he doesn't make it. So now, of course, this is a big deal because he had fevers for 2 days and vomiting. Like, this doesn't make any sense. He was a perfectly healthy child, no chronic issues, okay? There was no reason for this to happen, all right? So they're obviously getting ready to have the coroner come down and they're getting paperwork ready. It's a big deal, okay? Family members are showing up. The parents' demeanor seemed the same to me. Like, it's the same amount of worry. There's no hysterical crying. There's no like screaming. It's just the same amount of worry. Of course, that's a red flag to me. And I have to go back to my patients. So I go back to my patients, I come back out, and I walk past the coroner speaking to a family member. It wasn't the husband, it wasn't the mom. And right when I pass them, and I'm not eavesdropping or anything, okay? This is all just perfect divine timing. Right when I walk past them having a conversation, I hear the family member say that the parents do not want an autopsy for religious reasons. That was the moment I knew that these parents did something. They either did something or they knew something that they weren't telling us. And that's when I lost it. I didn't say anything to them, but I went over to my director, my charge nurse, and the attending physician, and I said, I will not rest until this kid gets an autopsy because I know they did something. They did something. This came as a shock coming from me because I'm not really outspoken like that in that kind of setting. I'm very much like, get the job done. Like if, and because of that, when I do say something, it means something, right? Because I don't just cry wolf and I don't just say those things for no reason. And so I'm like this now. I'm a little fired up and, they for sure, and you always have to have an autopsy when it comes to these kinds of cases anyway. Thank goodness, right? But I was just heated. So we have a debriefing and we don't usually debrief on codes because it's just something that happens every day, unfortunately. But we debriefed on this one because this was just so unusual and we needed to make sure that this child did not make it because of negligence on our part. And so everyone that was involved in the code sat in a circle, including the attending physician and the director. And we all just took turns talking and asking questions to see if there was some ball that we may have dropped. And there were nurses present in this room that were crying because it was, like I said, that's just an unusual thing to happen in that particular ER because it's not a trauma hospital, it's not a children's hospital. And so everyone said their piece and most of the nurses were like, did we do everything that we could have? Like, did we do something wrong? And as soon as it got to me, I literally stood up and was like, those parents did something. I was like, we didn't do anything wrong because we didn't. That code was actually ran flawlessly. It was much more smooth than I would have anticipated because we don't get pediatric codes very often. And so usually you're kind of stumbling, you're nervous, right? And there's usually a lot more people than that is in there that needs to be. It's usually just the main core code team that should be in there. Otherwise, you're just in the way. But it ran very smoothly. And I was like, those parents did something. I know it. I can feel it. And this kid just needs an autopsy. He needs an autopsy like immediately. And I'm not going to be able to sleep until we get it back. So of course, they look at me like I'm crazy, right? And they're so sweet. Like I love them so much. They they've learned that, like, I'm kind of out there sometimes, and that they're very supportive and that I mean well. But there was definitely this sense of like, whoa, she's a little out of bounds with this one. And it does sound very out of bounds. Like, could you imagine being a parent and then a nurse just accuses you of doing something to your child? Like, that's terrible. Of course, I didn't I didn't go to the parents themselves. I just spoke to my staff members, the people that I trusted, and I was like, something's not right here. So anyway, the attending physician came up to me personally, and I've never worked with her before. She came up to me and she was like, they're going to do the autopsy. They're going to call me. I will call you personally and tell you the results. I was like, thank you. I appreciate that. They do the autopsy that night and continue to the next day, and they give us a call. And I hear my charge nurse pick up the phone, and she's like, it's the autopsy. And she was like, oh, really? Are you sure that wasn't from compressions? Oh, okay. And then she hung up the phone. We're all standing there. And she looks at me and she's like, they found multiple fractured ribs and a brain bleed. And they all looked at me, and I was like, and at this time I'm like sitting in the reception area on this day, right? And I was like, huh. And then I go back to the reception area. And in this area, I'm by myself, right? It's like the triage front desk. And literally 5 people, including my charge nurse, came up to me on separate occasions. 5 people. And they were like, each one of them were like, how did you know? And, depending on who it was, I would give different reasons, right? Like the majority of them, I said something like, well, I've worked in peds, and so I just kind of can, pick up on certain things. And then some of them I was like, I just felt something. Okay. So anyway, that's a long story about that. So that happened around the same time that I'm having this weird obsession over children, right? And so I go to my friend who is a professional psychic medium, and I tell her what's going on with me. And I say, like, I don't know what it is about kids, but I just feel super protective right now. It's becoming like almost obsessive. And I feel like there's something that I need to uncover when it comes to this kind of energy. And so she's like, have you ever seen The Dark Crystal? And I was like, no. She's like, I haven't either, but there is a character in there, and it's like this old lady, like an old ogre, grandma, witchy lady in it. And she's like, she's standing by you, and she wants to give you a message. And I was like, okay. And so while I'm talking to her, and this is like a FaceTime call, right? I like Google, dark crystal old witch lady, and this picture pops up. And I show it to her, and I'm like, is this her? She's like, yes, that's her. She has a message for you. I was like, oh, okay. And so I get off the phone and I'm like, okay, well, I guess that means I need to watch that movie because I've never watched it before. And so I watched the movie. I make the guy that I'm dating at the time, I make him watch it with me, and he just thought I was crazy. But I was like, I think there's something in here about like children. Okay. So I watched this movie, and it's very symbolic. It talks about, now this is a Jim Henson movie from the 80s. Okay. It's like a Muppets type of production. But this movie talks about like astrology, and it talks about the light and the dark coming together and becoming neutral. It's very like metaphysical and spiritual for it being a kid's movie. Now, I had been questioning the existence of the reptilians, right? And so, so that was going on at the same time too. In this movie, that lady, there are these creatures that kind of look like birds or like vultures or something, if I remember correctly. They are the bad guys. And she refers to them as different names, like just a bunch of different names. One of the times she calls them lizards. You lizards, right? And I was like, huh, okay, whatever. They live underground. And in this movie, these creatures steal the podlings, which are babies. They take them underground, they strap them down, and they extract their essence. Okay? They use their essence as like some sort of like power. Okay? And when I saw this, I felt like there was some sort of like something that I need to look into when it comes to like taking something from children. And then I had a flashback of this time when I was a child where I collected missing persons, like postcards, right? You used to get these things in the mail and it looked like a long postcard and it would have two faces on it of like missing children, or it would have like a missing child from years ago and what they would look like today. And for whatever reason, I collected these. Okay. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know why. So anyway, I had a flashback of like when I did that. And I was like, is there something about missing children maybe being taken underground and maybe used for something? Like, are they getting something taken from them? And so then I decided to go down this whole rabbit hole, and I don't remember my searches, but it was like basically like taking something from children like underground. And the conspiracy of this substance came up. And as I read about this, the more I learned that I think that this stuff is real. And I couldn't let it go. And I was like, I don't know. I think that this might actually be a thing. And so that's how I get to it, right? And I still can't like really let it go. Now I'm starting to become, I wouldn't say like obsessed, but like I keep trying to talk to people about it. Of course, I'm very careful with who I speak to about these things, but not a lot of people knew what this is. There were like a couple of people that did know. And so I was really able to like bounce ideas or like, compare notes with them. One of them, he's an astral traveler, so that was really helpful. And from remote viewers, from him and from other people that are able to astral travel to certain places in the world, I learned that people have been able to remote view into certain underground bases and facilities where there are not only very dark and just awful experiments being run on humans, but that there are facilities that exist solely to extract microphone. Okay. And the way that this is done is, and since then, by the way, I've like meditated and channeled information, and that this is why I do believe that it is 100% real. Okay. What they do is you take a child and you basically inflict pain and fear on them to such a degree where there are massive amounts of adrenaline that gets pumped out of their adrenal glands. And through that, their blood is extracted and turned into this substance, which then this substance, the more fear and the more pain, the more adrenaline and the more potent this substance becomes. since then, from my meditations and channeling, I have also learned that, and then thus also confirmed by going down a rabbit hole once again, right, through internet searches and, conspiracy theory forums and things like that, right? I never go to those places first and then meditate because that will distort the information that I get from my own intuition. I have to start with my intuition first so that it's not biased in any way. And then I go look for the validation. And, sometimes I don't get it at all. And sometimes it's just something that I get on my own. This I definitely got a lot of validation on. So not only is it done in like a controlled lab or facility type of environment, but it is mostly done, and it has been done for a very long time in a more ritualistic type of setting. And the rituals can vary from letting a child out into a massive field or forest and then, hunting them down, to tying them up and inflicting pain and extracting it that way. There is a conspiracy theory, and I have not meditated on this specific conspiracy theory, okay? But it's this concept called, I don't even know if I should say it, actually. I'm not going to say it, but it is this practice and apparently it has something to do with a certain politician's emails, okay? Because there is supposedly an email that contains a file of a video of this said politician and another politician's wife tying a girl up and cutting her face off and then wearing it and them extracting it that way, okay? Sounds like it comes straight out of a horror movie, and so I don't know. I've not meditated on that particular event, and I don't know if I'm really going to, because it's not something I care to look at or even know, or it's just, the whole thing's disturbing. So anyway, so facility, underground, rituals, okay, politicians, celebrities, wealthy, ultra wealthy people, okay? So this is all happening to me, okay? I'm just trying to be a nurse in the ER. I'm going through this awakening. I'm hearing things. I'm astral projecting. I'm doing all this stuff. And then I've got this on my plate. And I'm like, how am I supposed to go to work and exist? How am I supposed to be a human and exist with this information that I feel deep in my bones is really happening, and yet nobody else knows about it? We obviously aren't doing anything about it, but there are missing children all the time, right? And so, of course, like, I'm kind of like going crazy with this information. And, then this is all around the time of when QAnon is becoming a thing, okay? I didn't know much about QAnon. I knew that it was like, I know now that it's, do I know? What I understand it to be is a group who believe that Donald Trump is like a savior, kind of, and that there are certain events that are meant to happen, and then therefore they kind of leak out certain information. And it has always been through like a forum or like a Twitter feed, I think. I could be totally wrong. Obviously, I don't follow it, but because you can get just the far out conspiracy theorist kind of energy, right? Where that almost becomes a religion in itself where you're blindly following that too. Like there's not, for some people, there's not an emphasis on listening to your own intuition, right? So anyway, so this is happening around the same time, and I'm just going through like my Instagram feed or whatever. I'm just kind of going through it because at this point I'm getting like conspiracy theory stuff, right? Because I'm looking up so much stuff. I get one where it's a tweet from Donald Trump, and it's like it says something that didn't really make a lot of sense. And apparently that was like a thing, is he would tweet things and he would misspell certain things intentionally because it actually meant something else. And I didn't learn this till like later, but there was one thing that he tweeted and it like didn't make any sense. I don't know. And then somebody posted on like some Q thing. I don't know if it was Twitter or what, but it had a screenshot of his post, and it said to turn this particular word into a .com and put it in the not in the search bar, but like where you actually put the actual website, right? They said, do those things and tell us where it takes you. And so I was like, okay, whatever, this looks like fun. And so I do it, and I don't know like where I'm going to go, but I don't know. And I'm very haphazard at this point. I usually don't click on links. Like I'm very good at detecting like if someone's trying to scam me and stuff like that. So I usually don't do that kind of thing. But for whatever reason, I felt inclined to do it with this. And so I did it. And it took me to this like Alibaba website, because I feel like it was like Alibaba. But it was different. I've been to Alibaba before. I've ordered things from that website, and it looked very similar to that, or it looked very similar to like an old school eBay where they hadn't like updated their software in a very long time. Kind of looked very like Craigslist-y, right? It was just older, but it was structured more like Alibaba, like you could buy a bunch of stuff. And it has like 3 different powders, and they're red. Okay, so that's it. That's the whole page. It's 3 powders. And, okay, so I'm like trying to look to see what these are. And I click on the first one, and it takes me to like the buy section or the shop page of that particular powder. And what does it say? It says microphone on it. And it says for 1 gram, you have to pay $3,000 for 1 gram, 3K. And this powder was like a dark red, maroon color. And so then I was like, there's no way. This can't be real. So then I start doing my search on like this substance and like QAnon, and QAnon is all over this. Like they are very well aware that this substance exists. And so that was the moment where I knew that this stuff was real and that I potentially could buy it. Did I buy it? Of course not, for a number of reasons. But was this website even actually real? I don't know, but like I've meditated on it, and I do believe that it is actually the real deal. And the fact that I got to that website from a tweet from Donald Trump and then a QAnon post, and like the whole thing was just it just sounds so insane. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I tell you this because I want you to understand how I personally have come to believe that this stuff is real, that it actually exists. Now, In preparation of this video, I still decided to try to channel some information on it, okay? And what I got was that this has been used for a very long time, except it wasn't called microphone. I don't even know if it was called anything, but it was just a known practice among those who basically dabbled in the dark arts. And you can see the evidence in movies of the elites trying to tell us that this is something that is real, okay? The most popular movie that I can probably use as an example would be Hocus Pocus. 3 witches try to steal children, and they're literally sucking out this substance, this essence of the child, right? To stay youthful, okay? What else? Dr. Sleep, which is a Stephen King movie / book, I think. And I believe in that one, they try to find particularly like psychically gifted children to take that from. The Dark Crystal, of course. And then in more recent times, I do believe that American Horror Story season 10, and I think the that particular story was called Red Tide, and it's basically about this writer who goes to this town and gets offered this drug, and they come in black tablets, and they said, like, if you have talent, if you take this, it will make you even more talented and you will become famous, right? But if you're not, then you'll just turn into like this blood-sucking monster. But ultimately, these people get hooked on this drug, and in order to get it, they have to kill people and take their blood. Okay? There is real history of Madame Delphine Lalaurie from New Orleans. She is famous for basically having a chamber, like a torture chamber in her home in New Orleans, where she would torture her slaves. And it has been rumored that she would take their blood and like put it on her face and like take baths in their blood because it helped her stay youthful. And then you also have Countess Elizabeth Bathory she was Hungarian, and she apparently was convicted of killing a lot of her servant girls, like hundreds, and bathing in their blood to stay youthful. Okay? So this is not an unusual practice among those that want to stay young. And so when I was trying to prepare for this video by like meditating, and I'm, getting these images, and, I asked, oh, sorry, I forgot one movie, Monsters, Inc. So when I was meditating on this video, I asked, like, well, okay, why can't they, not that we should be doing this anyway, but like, why can't you just get that from like a willing participant? And why can't it be in the form of like laughter and fun? Like, why can't you make it an enjoyable and consensual experience rather than something so terrifying and painful and of children that can't make that decision? And what I got is that the mechanism and the physiology and the biology behind this process can be understood to a degree, but the anti-aging fountain of youth aspect of it will never be understood fully, because it is not something that is biological. It is magic. it is of a spiritual nature. And I've talked about Luciferian energy before in my videos, and that like Luciferian energy is basically like seduction, addiction, but this practice is like the epitome of Luciferian energy. Just to what lengths are you willing to go to remain youthful? To have certain abilities within you be given to you just by extracting a substance from another human being. If you are someone that practices dark magic, then basically the essence of dark magic is just asking a dark energy for a favor. And in return, you're willing to do something for them. And most practices involve sacrifice of some sort. So in this particular case, in order to get that youthful fountain of youth substance, you have to inflict pain and fear on the person that you're extracting it from. And the best substance and the highest quality and whatever will always be coming from innocence, innocent children. And so during that process, there is like the energy of fear and the energy of pain and the energy of torture. Like those are actual energies that you then basically begin to work with. And by buying the substance, like if I were to have buy that, right, I wouldn't be paying for the substance. I would be paying the process. I would be consenting to the magic. So why do I talk about this now? Like I said, everything that's been happening with the P. Diddy trials, if you have been watching any of that, it's pretty wild, pretty out there. And I mean, there has been a former president to be named. So, and this is just the beginning. And I think people are so taken aback now. Most people are not ready for this at all. Like, I'm talking about it and I'm still not ready for it. I'm disgusted. But anyway, if you are not aware of this, then that's why I'm talking about it. This isn't to, just talk about it for fun, or for a shock factor or anything like that, because I don't care about that. This is because when people start to discover this, and it's just going to be a matter of time, maybe hopefully not anytime soon, but it will be a matter of time. Those of us who are going through the awakening are going to have to be the ones to help people integrate this kind of information and the existence of this so that we can better prepare ourselves in protecting our precious children. I would argue that, there are a lot of wild conspiracy theories out there that are true. Aliens and all this, yeah, it's wild. But I would argue that the existence of this substance, how it's extracted, and it's primarily the interdimensional beings that rule over humanity that are using this substance. The lizards. This will be just a devastating shock. And as those of us that are awakening, it will be unfortunately, our responsibility to be aware of this so that when it does come to light, we can help others prepare and to not see this as the end of the world and just how, like all hope is lost or anything like that, because it's not. We have to learn about these things so that we can understand the darkness, so that we can understand the enemy, so that we can be better. We can outsmart them. We can have a better understanding and appreciation for what it takes to protect our precious little children. So, towards the end of my meditation, I was bummed out. I'm a little bummed right now about it. I just hate talking about it. I hate the existence of it. And so I specifically asked for Archangel Michael, Gabriel, and Jeremiel. And I was like, I need something from you guys. Give me anything. And they were like, you as humans on this planet have been given dominion over certain things, right? Over the crops, over the trees, over animals, and over children. And they said, all of you are God's children, and we do everything that we can to protect you without infringing on your free will. But now is the time where we need you to step up and be the protectors of the children on your planet. As in, you guys are in human form. We need your help. Even by knowing the existence of it and then praying to the children to save the children, right? Just doing that actually helps. Praying helps. It works. By sending the children love and light and just giving them, pouring your heart energetically out to them, it actually works. Because, like I've said before, this is a spiritual war. This is energetic. And just knowing what side of this fight you're on, choosing it, and holding strong in that is actually going to help ultimately in the end. And even if you feel like you can't do anything, right? Makes you feel a little helpless. Even if you just pray that they at least can cross over, right? When that time comes, that they can peacefully cross over, because after going through traumatic events, sometimes your soul can't cross over. But praying for it actually does help. I have done that personally with a few, entities. And that's all I'm really doing is I'm just praying for them and talking to them and walking them through the process of like crossing into the light. And so I was like, okay, that's good. And I still wasn't satisfied. So I decided to take out my Bible. And I've shared this before, but I've tried to read it. It's so dry and difficult to understand. So I primarily turn to it to just get a little bit of guidance in any particular situation I'm in at the time. And so I'll just flip through it like with my eyes closed and then open it and then put my finger somewhere. So I did that with this at the end because I was like bummed, right? And so when I did it, I landed on Ezekiel 37:21. And it says, "And say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. And of course, if you actually read this story, it is referring to something else, not necessarily children, but and I was like, so do you mean we need to bring our children home? And as soon as I said that, my eyes just started crying and I was overtaken by a lot of emotion. And so when that happens, that's like basically confirmation that, yeah, that's what this message meant for me and in this particular case or on this subject. And it's to bring the children home. Sorry, that was a heavy one, but for some reason I just had to share that with you guys. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching my content. Thank you for taking your awakening seriously and for just doing the work. This path is not easy, obviously. This is a lot of responsibility on a lot of us. Just even hearing that kind of information is just a lot. And so I appreciate you, taking on this burden of knowledge. Fighting the good fight is not for the faint of heart, but I really appreciate you fighting alongside me. There aren't a lot of us, but our numbers are growing. I love you guys. Keep up the good work. If you need personalized coaching, then you can contact me. I'll leave everything down below. But take care. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.